hey, that's cool, but why would Snoke be threatened over Obi-Wan Kenobi's daughter? I mean, she has to be the daughter of somebody pretty powerful, or she was conceived as a virgin in the Force like Anakin was, which is possible, but to me that just seems like a cop-out. It makes all the sense in the world that she's related to Luke. So really it just comes down to who is the mom and what happened and what went on there. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
My nerd world.
All right, let's move on. One more piece of news here, and that is, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Lucasfilm has some very interesting and difficult choices to make in their near future, and I'm reading from MakingStarWars.net. And this is regarding General Leia in Star Wars Episode 8 and 9. With the devastating loss of Carrie Fisher, Leia's role in the upcoming episodes has become a hurdle they have to overcome in both respects, that both respects the legacy of Leia and Carrie Fisher. Insiders have told The Hollywood Reporter that at least 2 key scenes were planned for Episode 8 and 9. Here's your spoiler alert. 2 key scenes for Episode 8 and 9. A Leia reunion with Luke Skywalker and a confrontation with Kylo Ren, Adam Driver, her son who killed Harrison Ford's Han Solo in 2015's The Force Awakens. Now, with Star Wars Episode 8 reshoots still on the horizon, one would think there would be significant changes, according to the article on MakingStarWars.net, coming during that time. Many people wanted to see Luke and Leia together. Again, that said, if that is unlikely to happen now, it does preserve the ending of Return of the Jedi a little bit, making it an even more special since it's the last time that we see Han, Leia, Luke, Lando, Wedge, and the droids all together as a happy family. Colin Trevorrow, the filmmaker behind Jurassic World, who is directing Episode 9, is due to arrive this week in Los Angeles for meetings with Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy to discuss options, but unlike in other cases where actors died during the filmmaking process, Paul Walker, Furious 7 comes to mind. It appears that the team has time to explore solutions. Sometimes, and I don't mean any disrespect for this, but sometimes, some of the best work comes out of, adversity, right? Sometimes some of the most creative stuff comes out of having to make difficult choices. And I'm sure that Disney will do a fine job in figuring out what it is that they are going to do in having to deal with the difficult choice of how to deal with the passing of Carrie Fisher and how it relates to the movies. I'm with a lot of people. I don't want to see a CGI Carrie Fisher. I don't want to see a CGI Princess Leia. I think it would be a disservice to go and do that. I think that they will probably find a way to write her out of the story and perhaps take care of it in the opening crawl between movies. Probably the biggest spoiler alert I can give of the entire podcast this week was there is some speculation that she ends up in some kind of coma for the next film. So if that's the case, then there certainly is an opportunity where they can go and solve that issue through dealing with it in that way, and perhaps in the opening crawl and having her die between films.
There has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
You can always email the podcast at talkshownerd@gmail.com. Talkshownerd@gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter as well, @JohnJustice. Got an email. Friend of the show, Eric, writes, in response to Tony's email from last week in reference to discussing Jin's age. By the way, clarification on this before I get into Eric's email. They ask Jin in the movie, when was the last time you were in contact with your father? It doesn't say anything about meeting him one-on-one. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there in terms of age. But Eric writes, in reference to the discussion on Jin's age, I wouldn't have put her no older than 8 when her father was abducted by Krennic. I just finished reading Catalyst a couple of days ago, and I'm guessing that they fled around 18 to 24 months prior to the prologue in Rogue One. Urso already had a crop in the ground, which implies one growing season or so in hiding. And it obviously took some time for them to get there and set it up. They didn't just take over someone else's farm. Based on the shape of the planet or moon, we see as Krennic approaches, it clearly took some time to build a shelter, dig out of the hiding hole, install perimeter security, and still have time to get that blue milk delivery route. This is why I love Star Wars fans. Spin-offs. The one I'd like to see is Tarkin, which I finished reading about 2 weeks ago. Strangely, I found myself rooting for the bad guys, which has never happened to me before reading or watching Star Wars. It did happen a few times watching Star Trek, but William Shatner can drive just about anybody crazy after a while. Back to Tarkin. I love the home planet backstory that James Luceno created. It's one thing to like Vader because we know what happened to him along the way and that he redeems himself in the end. Tarkin never does that. He's seduced by a different power and winds up being a ruthless killer, as we saw on Jedha and Alderaan. And while he does die in A New Hope, he doesn't strike me as someone with a shred of good left. He's all business, and maybe that's what I like about him. As much as I'd like to see it be a spin-off, I don't know if Disney can do a movie where you might want to cheer for the bad guy. It just doesn't seem to fit their style. I also question whether they take a novel from the universe that didn't originate with Lucasfilm. Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't think we're going to be seeing any Tarkin film. Then again, Disney bought into killing everybody off at the end of Rogue One, which I don't think they've ever done before. Parting thought. If they decide to write Leia out of Episode 8, that might delay when the trailers come out and also the release date. Plus, it's possible R1 will get a bit of a bump based on Carrie's death, as gruesome as it may sound. I don't think it'll delay any of the marketing. There's easy ways to cut around as it relates to the trailer, and there's tons of stuff we didn't see in the original teaser trailers, and we didn't even see a whole lot of Leia in the original teaser trailers, to be honest. So I don't think that has any sort of bearing on what happens in terms of the promotion of the film. I will say this, and we'll end the podcast on this note today. There's a bit of genius in what Lucasfilm has done here. I do believe that the saga films, I think everybody does, are more popular than Rogue One. I think that the popularity of Episode 8 is going to be right there in the middle between what Force Awakens did, above what Rogue One did, and just below what The Force Awakens did. But don't discount the fact of what Lucasfilm and Disney have done here. With the focus of Luke Skywalker and what we found out from Rian Johnson about how this is going to be a major part of the film, this relationship, we didn't get Luke in the first movie, and we were fine with it. We all want Luke now. Not only do we want Luke now, we want to know who Rey is related to. And to me, that's enough to get every single soul back into the theater to go see Episode 8. And when you see Episode 8, you got to see what happens in Episode 9, right? Thanks again for hanging out on the podcast this week. Hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did recording it. Again, if you want to drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. Until next week, I hope you have a fantastic week. I'm going to go play with my Star Wars toys and watch a little Empire Strikes Back. May the Force be with you always.